Welcome back to Just Chattin', and this is the series of videos we do on Thursday and Sunday evenings just for our own entertainment. So for all you Audie fans, he is running around here somewhere, and he may actually make an appearance in the video, but it's another very, very hot day, high 90s, so that is what, 31, 32 centigrade? Frankly, it's too hot for me to be bothered to go look it up right now. And as a consequence, he's looking for reassurance from a safe distance, something that will insulate him from my body heat, which he can't take right about now. So yeah, he's been in a very strange little mood, and we'll have to see where that takes us. So we are going to break for the intro, and we'll be right back. So, rumors have been circulating in the mainstream media about exactly who is going to get stuck with the bill for the legal expenses and court costs with Harry's dud of a lawsuit against the Daily Mail and the Mail on Sunday. So, the rumors, and I hesitate to call them that, the stories, I'm more comfortable with that, the stories that are being circulated by the mainstream media are that Elton John might be willing to step up and pay the expenses for everyone. Now, I gotta tell you, I do not believe that Elton John is even considering this, which is not to say that he's not a kind and generous man, but why would he? If they had prevailed in their case, it's not as if his fellow claimants would have all signed their checks over to him if they had been awarded damages. No, I mean, seriously, in what universe does anybody think that would be happening? So why then should he take all of the burden if he was only going to get 2/7 of the win if they had prevailed? And the reason it's 2/7 is because one of the other 7 claimants is David Furnish, his husband. So between the two of them, their household is going to be responsible for 2/7 of whatever the damages are, assuming they are evenly spread out. By the way, that's like 28%. And we are talking many, many millions of dollars. So yeah, I think this is just a rumor that the Sussex camp is throwing out there. And they do this with 2 goals in mind. One, they have infantile brains. So they are of the belief that if they say it and throw it out into the ether, it will happen. Yes, sympathetic magic. I understand very primitive thinking, but I do believe this is characteristic of the thinking over in Montecito. And the other is that once a story is thrown out there, in order to contradict it, somebody has to deny it. And people are reluctant to do this for a wide variety of reasons. And I think that there's a certain level of pressure that is being brought to bear in order to force someone to do what the Sussexes want them to do. So they throw the story out and say Elton John is paid, and then what? Elton John has to go out publicly and say, hey, wait a minute, no matter what happens, we're going to be stuck with almost 1/3 of these expenses to begin with. Why should we pony up money for everybody else, many of whom do have the means to pay their own legal bills? But anyway, that's not what this video is about. That was the backstory that started me looking at the money in this lawsuit, because there were expenses. There were expenses for research. There were even things like transportation fees for witnesses. I assume that the claimants all paid their own expenses, but I don't know that. So I started taking a look at basically who wrote the check, who financed the case. And gosh, is this scary. I mean, I am not kidding. Now, okay, you all know I am a baby boomer. I don't have my age. My daddy fought in the Second World War, so that's how old I am. But because my daddy fought in the Second World War, one of the main financiers behind this case is not a name I am unfamiliar with. So let's look at who paid for the research for Harry's case, because, Lord, this is ugly, ugly stuff. So allow me to introduce you all to Max Mosley. Now, for my American friends, that name may not be ringing a bell. For my British friends, oh yeah, I bet it's ringing plenty of bells in the backs of your minds. So in order to get to know Max Mosley, let's cast back a generation. And let's talk about who Max Mosley's mummy and daddy were. Max Mosley is the son of Oswald Mosley and Diana Mitford. So let's start with Diana, because she was one of the 6 Mitford sisters. They had a brother too, by the way, who were wildly eccentric, wealthy, titled, they were all honorables, titled British socialites back in the jazz era, the 20s, the 30s. They were beautiful, they were brilliant, most of them were very, very accomplished. My American friends may well be familiar with the name Jessica Mitford, one of those 6 Mitford sisters who wrote The American Way of Death, which was an expose on the American funeral industry. Very influential, fabulous book, great read. I would recommend this to anyone. But one of them, her sister Diana, the other. Now, here's the thing with the Mitfords. They were very politically minded, and they were all fascists, with the exception of Jessica, who was a communist. So, hey, they got all the bases covered. But it's important to remember, or if you're not remembering, and if you're hearing this for the first time, back in the 20s and 30s, the relationship between the communists and the fascists was very tight, and people like Benito Mussolini came to the fascist party out of the communist party. He was a card-carrying communist before he got involved with the Italian fascist movement. Adolf Hitler, and we all know about his party, the Nazi Party. Yeah, that was short for National Socialist. They were very much considered to be left-wing and not right-wing. Just in case, this isn't a political channel, but just in case you're wondering where that communist-fascist connection comes from, this is where. So, Diana, a good fascist, ends up marrying Oswald Mosley, who was also titled Sir Oswald Mosley Baronet, wealthy, brilliant, socially prominent, etc. We're talking the British aristocracy here, the jazz baby era, when being a socialite, either male or female, would just put you in the newspapers every day. Oswald Mosley was a fascist. No question about that. He founded the British Union of Fascists. So when I describe these people as fascists, this is not hyperbole. This was who they were, right to their cores. Oswald and Diana were married in the home of Joseph Goebbels, Hitler's minister of propaganda. So yeah, they were very, very serious about this. The British Union of Fascists lost pretty much all of its public support in 1936 when they attempted to lead a march of their jackbooted thugs through a Jewish neighborhood on the East End of London, when it is estimated that 300,000 ordinary, everyday Brits showed up to block their paths. Women and children were out there in the streets to keep the fascists from going through this neighborhood. So, we have a plaque here that, let's take a look at this. This plaque that was erected in the area of the riot reads, "The Battle of Cable Street. The people of East London rallied to Cable Street on the 4th of October, 1936, and forced back the march of the fascist Oswald Mosley and his black shirts through the streets of the East End. They shall not pass." So yeah, beginning of the end for Mosley. Now, he still continued in his activities, and he lived for many, many years after this. His son, Max, came into the world in the midst of all of this. Max was born in the Second World War, and he was everything that the Mitfords and the Mosleys could produce. He was rich, he was good looking, he was an aristocrat, and he was brilliant. He graduated from Oxford with a degree in physics and decided, oh well, let's try something else instead. And within a few years, he was registered as a barrister, so he was certified to practice law in the UK. He wanted to go into politics, as you know, the family business, but he realized that the Mosley name was going to be a problem. So let me share with you a couple of quotes that he subsequently made about this. "If I had a completely open choice in my life, I would have chosen party politics, but because of my name, that's impossible. There was always a certain amount of trouble being the son of Sir Oswald until I came into motor racing, and I thought to myself, I've found a world where they don't know about Oswald Mosley." Yeah, he could see the writing on the wall. There was no political future for him. So, with degrees in physics and law, he goes off to get involved in Formula One racing. Like many of the Mitfords before him, he distinguished himself in everything he put his hand to. So yeah, we're not talking about a dummy here. And in fact, if these people's politics had taken a different direction, I think we would all be holding them up as very, very admirable role models. Unfortunately, that whole fascist thing stands in the way. Mosley never really shook off the legacy of his family. And by that, I don't mean that it was with him without his active adoption of his parents' values. He had made statements in the 1960s that even he later considered to be somewhat racist. And of course, the anti-Semitism was there. Well, as I say, fascists have a long list of people they hate. So even though Mosley was not showing this off in a political arena, it was still there for him. And as we move into the 21st century, one of the British newspapers got hold of some photos of a party that has been described as a Nazi-themed orgy. You can't make this stuff up. I swear to you, that is how it's been described. And he sued the newspaper for printing those pictures and for other characterizations they made to go with it, I'm guessing. But basically, he was alleging they had violated his privacy. And this is how Max Mosley and Harry's case against the Mail and the Mail on Sunday intersect. Max Mosley then, as a result of his experience, decided he was going to crusade against press intrusions, press abuses of people. And I'm not saying the press did not intrude on people in the past. I'm not saying that people were not abused. Yes, of course they were. But what people like Mosley and Harry are trying to do is silence the free press. They want to control the narrative so that only the information they want out there will be released. They basically want to turn the press into their own PR machine. Now, Mosley attempted to get laws in the UK passed that would require newspapers to contact the subject of any story they were about to publish prior to publishing the story, to allow these people the opportunity to go to court and get an injunction to keep them from publishing the story. Well, he didn't get anywhere with that one, thank heavens. But that shows you where the thinking is at. It's not just about protection of people's privacy rights. It's about controlling the narrative and going to court to get injunctions, meaning obviously if you have enough money to go into the courts in the first place, you can control the narrative. So, not satisfied with any of this. Remember Nazi orgy? Those pictures were circulating, and Max Mosley was able to sue Google in France and in Germany to keep Google in both of those countries from publishing search results that would lead internet users to those pictures. Oh, here's one of the pictures, by the way, just saying. Because, yeah, I'm not in France, and I'm not in Germany, and I can Google those search results for myself, and golly, yes, am I going to do it. So, yeah, that is the direction Mosley was interested in taking this, to silence not just newspapers, but even internet search engines, so that he could stop information at the point at which it was simply being asked as a question. So, yeah, not exactly a fan of free speech, is he? Now, he ended up founding an organization called Hacked Off. He financed it, and Hacked Off provided funding for Harry's lawsuit. I don't know exactly how much funding they provided, but they did provide funding. It is in the articles in the video notes. So Harry's lawsuit was funded by Max Mosley, whose money comes from Oswald Mosley, well-known fascist, Diana Mosley, again, well-known fascist. So this is how the money starts off in the hands of Oswald Mosley, Baronet, flows down to his son and heir, Max Mosley, and from Max off to Harry via Hacked Off. So yeah, Harry's lawsuit was funded, at least in part, by the son of Oswald Mosley, well-known fascist. I don't know, and I found that very interesting. I also found it interesting that when the British press released stories back in February about this, no one picked up on it. In the United States, yeah, maybe nobody picked up on it because we just were very isolated from Mosley's British activities, from whatever the various Mitford sisters were up to. We were not as keenly aware on a day-to-day basis as I am assuming the Brits were, as they would have had to be. Maybe the US media didn't see the connection, but if they didn't see the connection, it's because they didn't do their homework. The real issue that I see is where this is all pointing. And it's not just Harry trying to make the press accountable, as he claims. No, it is about taking control of the narrative. It is about hampering people's ability to even look up information online, because that was Mosley's agenda. Stop the search engines. And he was successful in 2 countries. So I think it's important that we keep that in mind, because we can look at this, we can see, first of all, where Harry's mind is going with this, where this is all leading, and whose mind this notion came from in the first place. The mind of a fascist. So, that is what I have for you today. Thank you for being with us. Audie had been photobombing the video, frankly. So there were a lot of cuts where I had to take him out because he was very irritated when I didn't pay attention to him. So we're going to have to wait for a more pleasant day to see the cat. Thank you for being with us. I hope to see you again next time. We are going to take a look at a slideshow on the way out. And in the meanwhile, have a terrific day.